The following webinar is the start of a series of 5 webinars intended to cover the topic of managing hand-arm vibration exposure risk. The material has been collected and compiled by ReactTech in cooperation with a number of leading health and safety professionals. It is a series of 5 webinars, each approximately 20 to 30 minutes in length. In this first webinar, we will look at, we will provide a basic understanding of hand-arm vibration, the causes of hand-arm vibration syndrome, and an outline of the legal framework surrounding the topic. So within this first webinar, on completion of the material, we would expect you to understand hand-arm vibration syndrome as a disease, be able to identify the symptoms, understand the risks involved in developing hand-arm vibration syndrome, and the impact on victims and industry from this industrial disease. And we'll finish the session with a review of the legal requirements in and around the topic, both directly and related to the topic. So what is hand-arm vibration? Hand-arm vibration is the exposure of the hand and arms to vibrating energy. This can be from handheld tools, but also hand-guided tools or materials. So it's not necessarily a power tool. There are significant risks from being exposed to vibration incident to the hand, which isn't concerning the holding of power tools. The common feature to any activity which is causing hand-arm vibration risk is the transmission of vibration energy into the hand and arm system. So any source of vibrating energy which comes into the contact with the hand. And any exposure to vibration into the hand system will incur a health risk if that exposure is for a significant length of time or the energy itself is significant. Frequent and regular exposure to vibration to the hand and arm can lead to irreversible health conditions. We'll show you in the next slide the 3 areas of the body which can be affected by exposure to hand-arm vibration. But basically, exposure of vibration going into the hand and arm system can lead to not only hand-arm vibration syndrome, but also carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome can have other causes, but one of the causes is exposure of vibration into the hand. So hand-arm vibration syndrome as an industrial disease is a medical term that was used to bring together a number of different impacts to the body of exposure to vibration. So there are in principle 3 specific subgroups of exposure. First of all, there can be neurological injuries, and the early symptoms of these are tingling and numbness in the hands and fingers. Vascular injuries relate to the damage that can be caused to the capillaries of the small blood vessels in the hand, and this is generally what is recognized as vibration white finger, because the hands can become white or blanched. And then finally, there's musculoskeletal type injuries in the form of arthritis or tendinitis, because it's impacting the muscle fibers are impaired in terms of your ability to grip tools and therefore in reduced mobility and pain in the hand and arm. Put simply, for the point of view of perhaps your workforce, the symptoms of hand-arm vibration syndrome include tingling, numbness or blanching of the fingers, not being able to feel things properly, and loss of strength in the hand. And loss of strength in the hand can be coupled with loss of the ability to sense or touch, and then again the other factor that's often reported is pins and needles in the fingers, severe numbness, and then painful wrists is associated with carpal tunnel syndrome. The symptoms of hand-arm vibration syndrome, but also carpal tunnel syndrome, can come and go. They're not necessarily experienced on a continuous basis, but continued exposure to vibration may result in the damage becoming permanent. This can happen over a few months, but more commonly over a number of years. It's essentially a gradual build-up of damage. It is certainly perceived that hand-arm vibration syndrome is irreversible, while carpal tunnel syndrome may be improved with surgery. So let's look at the industrial disease hand-arm vibration syndrome in terms that your employees may more readily understand. So work activities that expose individuals to vibration, such as the use of vibrating tools, can lead to a permanent health disability. And that will affect even your general domestic life. For instance, your general comfort and sleep can be disturbed by the symptoms of hand-arm vibration syndrome. If you work in cold or wet conditions, the blanching and attacks of vibration white finger will affect your ability to even do that work, but also in your domestic life, if you're carrying out outdoor activities such as washing the car or gardening, where again it may be in the cold and the wet. The syndrome can also lead to your ability to do your work safely, as it can impact your ability to grip the tools with adequate strength. Loss of grip strength, while it can also affect your working life, will also affect domestic life in doing things such as playing golf, DIY, or fishing. And lastly, the loss of manual dexterity, which comes from hand-arm vibration syndrome, means that in a work environment, it makes it very difficult to do detailed work, such as handling of small things and screws and nails, and detailed assembly work, which again translates into daily life and the ability to do tasks which would require dexterity, such as fastening buttons or sorting money. Now we'll now move on to looking at this from a victim's perspective by playing a short video.
I played darts. Can't do that anymore. Can't feel the lines. With it being freshwater fishing, fine lines between my fingers. I can't feel them. Can't pick up small screws. DIY. There's quite a few things you can't do a lot of now. Turning pages over on a paper. You wet your fingers all the time because you just can't feel the paper between your fingers.
If I'd have realised how bad it was when I got it, I wouldn't have even started the trade I did. I would have jacked in, because it's been, especially for me for the last 7 years, it's been very hard. It affects you so much in work and out, and it's a constant pain.
The first signs are just the tingling and the tips of your finger going white.
There's just no feeling, it's just completely dead, you know. You couldn't like say with a pen, you couldn't pick a pen up, because you wouldn't be able to feel, you couldn't write because you've no feeling there, you know.
If you want to do your own maintenance on cars, during winter time you can't unscrew a screw.
It affects everything from sports, hobbies, whatever you want to do, because you can't feel your fingers.
Hand-arm vibration syndrome is a reportable disease in the Ritter system of the HSE. Looking at the statistics as recently as 2018, hand-arm vibration syndrome amounted for approximately 45% of all the cases reported. Carpal tunnel syndrome was a further fairly dominant percentage, albeit that not all carpal tunnel syndrome is caused by exposure to vibration. The HSE assessed in 2005, when the regulations were first released, that based on the type of work undertaken, that there were some 2 million people in the UK at risk of developing hand-arm vibration syndrome, just based on the nature of the work that was undertaken. And at that time, it was assessed that around 300,000 people within the UK were suffering advanced stages of hand-arm vibration syndrome. Looking at more recent data, the graphic on the right-hand side is the total number of reportable incidents of Pandan vibration syndrome reported to the HSE in the period 2014 to 2018. As you can see, it's spread over a diverse industry sectors, as shown by the coloured bars, but also that the number is significant, remains significant, and is showing no signs over this 5-year period of declining. So what is a safe level of exposure? For this, to answer this question, there's 2 documents that perhaps you should refer to. One is a research paper published by the HSE of the link that's shown on your screen. And basically, within that report, the HSE summarised the situation by saying exposure below the action value cannot be considered to be safe. Within the ISO standards of 5349 on how to assess daily exposure to vibration, the 2 statistics that are quoted here are repeated, and I'll show you a graphic in the following slide as to where this comes from. But basically, if someone is exposed to the exposure action value for a period of 12 years, then they have a 10% probability of developing hand-arm vibration syndrome. If their exposure levels are more at a level of the exposure limit value, then that same 10% probability drops to 6 years. And this data is derived from the established correlation between the time to vascular damage, so this is the time to only the white finger part of hand-arm vibration syndrome, and daily exposure to vibration. So the graph here explains it in terms of daily exposure expressed in A8 values in meters per second squared. We've shown in this graphic to try and simplify an understanding where the action value plays and where the limit value plays. So this is where if you're exposed to an action value of 100 points or 2.5 A8 meters per second squared, then that's equivalent to about 12 years. If instead you're at the limit value, it's 6 years. The table on the left-hand side, we're showing both the A8 meters per second squared and points for a range of levels of exposure. What would be the 10% probability of developing hand-arm vibration exposure? So if you're exposed to a level of even 64 points, so it's below the action value, but if that is your typical daily exposure of 64 points, then the 10% probability would say 15 years at that sort of exposure level, you would carry a 10% probability of developing the disease. So to finish this seminar, we're going to look at the legal framework or the legal requirements in and around managing exposure to hand-arm vibration. So first of all, you should always bear in mind the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, where every employee is entitled to a safe place of work, and it is the duty of the employer to ensure that that employee is kept safe, and there is a duty of care for the employee to follow the guidance and requirements of their employer at their work. But more specifically, the Control of Vibration at Work Regulations 2005 is the requirement that defines how workers should be protected at their workplace from exposure to vibration from vibratory equipment or other sources which transmit vibration into the hand. It is also worth bearing in mind the Management of Health and Safety at Work Act Work Regulations 1999, which talk about how to assess risk, and also the provision of use of suitable equipment as defined by the Use of Work Equipment Regulations 1998. And finally, the Supply of Machinery Regulation 2008, again, gives greater clarity and detail on suitable equipment for the workplace. But most importantly of all, it's the Control of Vibration at Work Regulations 2005, where there is a requirement to eliminate, and if elimination is not possible, to control exposure to vibration at the workplace as low as reasonably practical. Specifically, it requires that there is an assessment of the risk of employees to exposure to vibration, including the assessment of their daily exposure to vibration. There is a requirement that any employees who are exposed to vibration, that they be properly informed and trained of that risk while undertaking the use of tools, and also, where required, that they are provided with health surveillance. One final area of law to be aware of is that in buying work equipment or tools which may emit vibration, there are legal requirements on the suppliers of that equipment. So first of all, they should give you a warning that the tool is or equipment is indeed capable of emitting vibration levels which may be risky. They should give you information on the safe use of that equipment, and where necessary, if specific training is required in order to use the tool safely. They should give you information on how to maintain the equipment in order to preserve or maintain its vibration performance. And also, they should provide you information on the vibration emissions of that tool or equipment. So to finish this particular seminar, we'll share with you some statistics from the industry in terms of the legal costs of hand-arm vibration syndrome. It should be borne in mind that there are two particular areas in which an organisation may face costs as a consequence of employees developing hand-arm vibration syndrome. First of all, there's the ability for the HSE to impose fines on organisations which they find have been non-compliant in their duties and responsibilities to their employees. And secondly, there is the ability for the employees themselves to seek personal liability claims against their employer. And for those, organisations generally have insurance in order to cover these costs. But again, these insurance costs come at a cost in themselves. Loughborough University carried out a study in 2018 where they estimated the cost to the construction industry alone was round about £16 million per annum. And the construction industry, in terms of a share of ridders for hand-arm vibration syndrome, is about 25% of the overall cost. So just some quantitative assessment of the cost of hand-arm vibration syndrome in terms of not following the legal requirements. So in summary, hand-arm vibration syndrome as a disease is preventable. It's preventable by eliminating or reducing exposure to hand-arm vibration. But once the symptom of hand-arm vibration syndrome have developed, that damage is permanent. Damage from exposure to hand-arm vibration can impact the ability to do fine work or to do work safely, and can lead to very painful attacks as a result of finger blanching in cold conditions. Hand-arm vibration syndrome is serious and disabling, and the HSE estimate that nearly 2 million people in the UK are at risk because of the work that they undertake. It is the highest reported industrial disease in the UK. And by law, an employer must assess and identify measures to eliminate or to reduce the risk from exposure to hand-arm vibration as low as reasonably practical. And the cost to both employees and employers of inaction can be extremely high. So that concludes this first seminar on managing hand-arm vibration exposure. We will close with some additional reference material that you may want to review in order to study the topic further.